Hello.
Hello, nothing.
My respect goes out to the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people for allowing us to live and work in their territory. I'm a mixed heritage woman of Gitxsan and European descent. My grandmothers are Nancy Morgan Sterritt of Kitwanga and the late Agnes Olson, a settler to the prairies who raised her family in Campbell River. My mother is Sharon Darlene Lillian Sterritt. She was a single mom most of my young life, and she raised 3 girls to know that they were loved and they were valued. She didn't have any material wealth at all, but what she did have was a deep commitment to love, to speak, show, and sow love to her daughters and others. So I know this isn't the case for everyone. For Indigenous women especially, it might even be classified as rare. Now, I'm no expert on this and I don't usually speak of it in public, but we can't ignore the fact that Indigenous women are 3 times more likely than non-Indigenous women to be the victim of sexual assault. And the proportion is the same for Indigenous girls. They're 3 times more likely than non-Indigenous girls under the age of 15 to be sexually assaulted. These are only the incidents that are reported. And with almost 1,200 missing and murdered Indigenous women, I'm not sure how we cannot be affected by the weight of this. And how does this reality translate into our definition of love? Whether that's self-love or self-respect or love that comes from external sources. Now that I have experience raising 3 girls of my own, sorry, I have 2 girls and a boy, 3 kids of my own. But I can safely say that in my family, we're changing the cycle. Not to say that my girls haven't been targeted by sexual predators or made to feel that they were only a piece of ass, because they have. But the inner strength they have, I believe, started with my mom. It's not an accident that my daughters know how to carry themselves. They know how to muster confidence even when they're feeling insecure. Admittedly, their parents are nowhere near perfect, and we've certainly made our mistakes and blunders as parents. But I'm certain that we have provided the same thread that my mom has woven through the fabric of our family. Now, the most interesting thing about my mom's commitment to love is that she came from an abusive home. Her father was physically, emotionally, and verbally abusive. And her mother, my grandma, was very passive, and her self-esteem had mostly been beaten down over many years of a bad marriage. My mother was homeless at the age of 13 because of that bad relationship with her father, and she had to travel as far as Saskatchewan to seek a safe home with distant relatives. So I ask myself all the time, how did she find it within herself to continue to love? She married my father, who was an adulterer and incapable of loving, incapable of being a husband or a father. She fled that relationship with 2 kids under the age of 2 and pregnant, and I can tell you she made a lot of mistakes and had to do a lot of shitty things to make ends meet. And still, she loved. She's an amazing woman. And all her life, no matter what kind of rotten situation she was in, she found a way. She made room to care for others, to offer her home, provide a hot meal, or save up for that special gift. But she took a risk in being so open and loving. And at times, she was vulnerable to not so positive forces, and she was taken advantage of. Occasionally she ended up bruised and battered, and sometimes she received those bruises in front of her children. So it's no surprise that her children also felt the brunt of some of those bad people. But today Sharon is 70 years old and in a long-term loving relationship. She has 5 awesome grandkids and has a whole community of people who love her back. Those are the rewards for the risks that she's taken. She's earned it. So why am I telling you this? A few weeks ago, my daughters and I hosted the first of its kind Indigenous Women's Leadership Summit in Ottawa. We brought together incredible women from across the country to share their stories and to inspire others to continue taking on leadership roles, to bust stereotypes, and to shift the narrative about what it means to be an Indigenous woman in this country. I believe we started something incredible and something important. And as my friend Tira says, it's time. So we had these amazing women all together from every province and territory, from every kind of leadership role you can think of, including students, political leaders, entrepreneurs, corporate executives. The event was full of Indigenous women who lead at every level, and it was truly a dream come true for me. Now, this might sound crazy, but the best part of the discussions was that almost every presenter cried in public. And if they didn't cry themselves, they actually had the audience in tears for sure. Now, I'm not telling you this to share the obvious that when women sometimes cry, obviously so do I. I'm actually sharing this because I know the one thing that was so disarming, the one thing that was so unexpected by every woman in the room that got up on that stage. Can you guess what it was? It was love. And I don't mean the adoring fangirl kind of love, although there was definitely some of that. I mean intentional and directed warmth, support, and good wishes. And part of the invitation to be part of the summit was a commitment to lift others up, to learn from each other's life lessons. And you know what those are, right? We often frame our mistakes, our biggest challenges, and our toughest situations as learning lessons. Our commitment with the Indigenous Women's Leadership Summit was to shine a light on achievement, triumph, and determination, and to shift the narrative, to sow love through the crowd of women who have now also committed to carry that positivity back to their communities, their homes, and their workplaces. We committed to sharing the positive roles we play in all walks of life, to bust stereotypes, and to ensure that young Indigenous women can see themselves as an airline pilot, as a heart surgeon, an Olympic athlete, the mayor of a town, or the owner of a construction company, or a cosmetics company for that matter, to ensure the next generation knows that all possibilities are on the table. So we heard from these leaders that their path was never easy, but there was a clear message. They said, you have to take care of yourself. You have to respect yourself and somehow learn to turn off that voice in your head that says you can't. In fact, that you have to dig deep and learn that you can. So I believe this not only takes courage and perseverance, but it also takes self-esteem. How do you build self-esteem? You probably already know my answer, but I'll say it anyway. I believe it comes from stability and unconditional love. We also heard a strong message from the Deputy Minister of the Status of Women in Canada, Gina Wilson. She's the most senior Indigenous executive in the Canadian Public Service. She challenged the audience to live your power. And that really resonated with me, and once again, it made me think of my mom. What did she have that was more powerful than any of the shit she faced in her life? Somehow, through everything, she preserved her power to love. She made a deliberate and conscious choice to love instead of hate, to be positive instead of angry, to change the cycle for her daughters. I'm proud to say that I've learned this from her. From a personal perspective, as hard as it is to admit, I too have made myself vulnerable at times. I've poured my heart into my work and have been deeply scarred as a result. I've loved and trusted the wrong people, and I've definitely had my share of learning lessons. But I'm now surrounded by a large community of people who return the love. And from a professional perspective, it might be hard to visualize how this shows up at work, especially for those of us who have been in the energy, mining, and heavy construction settings. But I can assure you that even some of those tough guys that I've worked with, the engineers, the underground miners, the project managers, some have learned what it means to lead with your heart at work. My best experiences have come from those tough guys, some who started out as determined detractors, those guys who ended up joining in on an inclusion project or who participated in a training or mentoring program with Indigenous employees, or maybe they worked alongside an Indigenous contractor at a work site. The best days came from those guys standing up in front of their peers and sharing their pride, sharing their newfound love of putting others before self, their new love of diversity or a new perspective. Or maybe they just loved the idea that I'd leave them alone after that. It's a possibility. But these best moments, I call them the Grinch moments. You know, the day the Grinch's heart grew 3 sizes. This is the reason I do what I do. Even if I've had to be tough right back, or if I've had to muster all my courage to stand up to these people, it's the Grinch moments that are the rewards that come from taking the risks. My reward for daring to use the L word at work. So I know who I am. I know where I come from. I was raised with unconditional love. Still, there's no doubt that I fall into many statistics. Many that work against me. Indigenous, female, raised by a single parent, poverty, sexually assaulted before the age of 7. But in a true act of defiance to those statistics, I am here. I've not gone missing. I haven't been murdered. And I'm doing everything I can to share what I know with the next generation. I choose love so that my daughters and my son will choose love too. My profound hope is that we can create a safe world without violence and terrible statistics for Indigenous people. That we create the conditions for them to become fierce warriors and still bring love to everything they do. That will be the ultimate reward. Thank you.